Okay, the hearing is called to order for the special city council meeting budget hearing, September 2nd, 2020. Madam Clerk, pledge please.
United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilman Asbill,
Present.
Councilman Buddy,
Present.
Councilman Chavaline,
Present.
Councilman Johnston,
Present.
Councilman Wheeler,
Present.
Mayor Bodier,
Present.
Police Chief Walker, Fire Chief St. Cyr, is absent. Finance Director Todd Tudion,
Present.
City Attorney Scott Stansberry is absent. And Municipal Clerk Nicole Lee is present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, the only message I have this evening is that the Jefferson Parish landfill has closed. I'm not sure if it's temporarily or permanently. And River Birch is now going to be taking that all of our waste in. So things are going to be a little bit slower than normal. So your garbage pickup may be a little bit later than usual, which may honestly work out for us because some of our garbage pickup is usually way earlier than it should be. So it might just work out perfect. So thank you. That's the only note I've had.
Yeah, if I could add to that, what I understand is that the heavy rain we had last week flooded the landfill.
Oh, really?
So they're pumping that water out, and I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it could be a week, it could be a month before they can pump all that water out so the landfill wells can operate.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that last week when we got that rain, River Ridge got it way worse than we did. Right across the river got it way worse than we did. And we saw just a little bit of it, but I mean, River Ridge, the homes flooded that, had not flooded before. So we're very thankful and happy that we that it didn't come down as bad as that. We stayed ahead of the curve and did everything we could to keep cleaning drains and working to keep all the infrastructure intact. So we were very fortunate, and I wouldn't even know it did come in pretty heavily. Thank you, Councilman Buddy.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Move to amend the agenda to add proposed resolution 2020-10.
What would you like to move it to?
Let's do it.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor from Councilman Asbill to bring proposed resolution 2020-10 from the floor. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Buddy. All in favor? I'm sorry, then open for public hearing.
The resolution is titled a resolution urging Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards to enact COVID-19 recovery phases and restrictions on a regional basis in lieu of the current statewide implementation, and further requesting that the criteria for entering phase 3 be provided to all parishes.
Okay. All right, so no one can speak in public hearing. We have a second by Councilman Buddy. All in favor?
Yeah.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Okay, the resolution can be brought from the floor. Madam Clerk, do we want to go ahead and read it now?
Proposed resolution number 2020-10. The following resolution was offered by Councilman Asbill. A resolution urging Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards to enact COVID-19 recovery phases and restrictions on a regional basis in lieu of the current statewide implementation, and further requesting that the criteria for entering phase 3 be provided to all parishes. Whereas managing the COVID-19 crisis on a statewide basis has created unnecessary hardships for Harahan businesses and residents. And whereas national experts have recommended a region-based approach to reopening communities and economies in the White House plan. And whereas the original justification for stay-home orders and phased reopenings was not to overwhelm public health resources, including hospitals and equipment. And whereas Jefferson Parish and Region 1 as a whole, hospital bed, ICU bed, and ventilator capacity have remained well below capacity since early June. And whereas 170,046 individuals have been tested in Region 1 with 16,227 being positive with an infection rate of less than 10%. And whereas the city of Harahan, as of September 2nd, 2020, has a total case count of 269 cases, less than 3% of the population, of which 70 were clustered at a senior citizen long-term care facility. And whereas testing continues at numerous sites throughout the region. And whereas safety protocols such as masks, social distancing, sanitation, and capacity reduction remain in place. And whereas Harahan is a community of small businesses that comply with orders to close their doors to help slow the spread while national chains continue to operate. And whereas numerous businesses throughout Harahan are now struggling to keep their doors open due to restrictions, with many citizens having lost their jobs or being threatened with personal bankruptcy. Whereas it is the desire of the Harahan Council, Harahan Economic Development, the Jefferson Parish Council, the Jefferson Chamber of Commerce, and the Jefferson Parish Business Council to move Jefferson Parish forward into phase 3 of the recovery while maintaining some of the required safety protocols. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Harahan, Louisiana, acting as governing authority of said city, Section 1 of Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards, be and is hereby urged to enact COVID-19 recovery phases and restrictions on a regional basis in lieu of the current statewide implementation. Section 2, that the criteria for individual regions of the state of Louisiana to enter into phase 3 be provided to all political subdivisions within Louisiana. And Section 3, that the municipal clerk is hereby requested and authorized to send a certified copy of this resolution to Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards.
Move to open the public hearing on resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Mazza, second by Councilman Johnson, open the public hearing. All in favor?
Yay.
5 yeas, 0 nays, public hearing is now open. Anyone like to come forth and speak about this resolution? Okay, no one coming to speak forth, and motion to close public hearing. Motion by Councilman Wheeler, second by Councilman Buddy, all in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 yeas, 0 nays, public hearing is now closed. All right, council discussion.
No discussion.
I'm just gonna be honest, I normally wouldn't accept the resolution brought to the floor at a special council meeting like tonight, but being the conditions we're in, I think the faster we get this process, the better we are. I don't find it, us bringing this up as anything.
I think the understanding was to try to get it to the governor before so I think next week is when he's going to possibly change whether we're gonna stay in phase 2, I think Friday the 11th, so he's supposed to make a decision, maybe Wednesday before or something.
Right. So just to let the citizens know, we normally wouldn't let another colleague bring something up like this
Not a
at
special meeting.
a special meeting. So,
And if I may add, Jefferson Parish this week passed a very similar resolution. We think this will be beneficial to all parishes
to get them sent in.
to get this sent in now. So there's a ball rolling. We want it to be part of that positive push to get the governor to set criteria to when we can get to phase 3 and to look at this on a regional basis as opposed to statewide. And I think everybody believes that a regional basis makes sense. And we all want to know what the end game is. How do we get to phase 3?
Thank you, Council.
I saw it on TV yesterday in the parish.
All right, so now you want to vote.
Did you like what you see? Did you like what you saw?
Yeah,
Good.
I agree with him.
Good.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion by Councilman Asbill, second by Councilman Chatterling to adopt resolution 2020-10. All in favor?
Yeah.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Resolution is adopted unanimously.
And then budget hearing for all departments.
Council, mayor, citizens. Wanted just to provide an update on the budget process for the 2020 year to you. A couple reminders just to make sure we're all on the same page. First, that the proposed budget amendment includes all the funds of the city's general fund, special revenue funds, the sales tax fund, the police millage fund, the sewer fund, and the capital projects fund. The process that we went through is we took the actual amounts through June 30 and projected the remaining 6 months to come to a projected total revenues and total expenses for each fund for the 12-month period ended December 31, 2020. So we did use June 30 just for the council's benefit and the public and the mayor. We did use June 30 because we started this process a couple weeks ago. We did look at the July numbers when we closed out the month of July and August. And then when we used those numbers, it didn't really change any of our year-end projections. So we felt comfortable with keeping the process that we already had in place without having to try to do it for the actual activity for the month of July. So that's maybe an overall on the budget process. I was going to walk through 5 or 10 basic assumptions that we used in putting the budget together. And then we'll move on to the next items. So first, on the sales tax revenue. So the sales tax revenue was based on actual activity for 5 months, considering the activity through the month of June. And we estimated 7 months for the second half of the year. Some of these accounts that we estimated, like sales tax, were a bit of a challenge because we had months from pre-COVID where we averaged 200,000 net in sales tax funds. We had months in COVID where in April, May, when things were shut down, we netted, I think the lowest month was 120,000, 130,000 of sales tax funds. And now we're back up. The most recent month was back at 206,000. So that was a challenge just to estimate that, but we averaged it out at about 170, 175,000 through the rest of the year. Again, just to be conservative with the sales tax estimates. Property taxes limited in the way of any further estimates because most of those funds are collected in December of each year. Franchise fees, we based on the fiscal year 2019 amounts. As we previously mentioned in one of the public meetings, we've had conversations with Entergy, Cox, and the others that remit franchise fees to the city, and they are not expecting any impact from COVID-19. Garbage fees, we just based on actual collections. Miscellaneous revenue, we just based on the activity for the first 6 months and adjusted for the LWCC dividend of about $100,000, which is a one-time, that's a one-time hit each year. So we adjusted for that. On the expense side, payroll and the related labor accounts, there's a number of ways we could have estimated that through the second half of the year. What we did is take the 2 most recent payroll periods in the last 2 weeks of July and estimate the number of pay periods remaining through December 31st. And so that's how we calculated that for the payroll costs for each department, as well as that impacted the benefit costs and retirement costs for police and fire. Legal fees, we took a look at, and that's an estimate. Obviously, we've had some legal costs in the first 6 months. We estimated the cost of the second 6 months based on existing lawsuits or litigation. And then lastly, the sewer maintenance and the cost of the sewer fund. Again, we looked at primarily the outstanding invoices to Veolia and the anticipated repairs and maintenance overages through December 31st in accordance with that agreement with Veolia. So in summary, that's the bulk of the projections and the assumptions that we used in pulling the budget together. We do currently forecast an increase in fund balance for the 2020. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any specific questions the council or the mayor have in regards to departments, specific accounts, funds, any specific questions.
Yeah, Tom, got a question. I'm looking at the overview sheet here on page 1, and it just caught my eye that we're projecting the police department to bring in another $411,000 in the last 6 months. Is that
Line
correct?
10.
Line 10, column E.
Yes. Probably the bulk of that is the police millage, is the transfers. So we have the transfers from the police millage, really set up just a transfer of a fixed amount each month with a true up at the end of the year based on the actual cost. So that's, give me 1 second, imagine that that's the bulk of that. Yeah, so that's the bulk, and the remaining portion is just the sales tax funds. So there's a portion, a small portion of sales tax funds that are specific to police, and so those are credited to that department as well. So that's the bulk of that entire projected revenue for police for the second half of the year.
And then, I guess line 23, on the police expenditures, we're looking at 513 over budget. So we'd have to, would we subtract that extra revenue from that to find out the true overage?
So this has been a question that's come up often, not just recently, but in the past as well. So I would tend to look at most of the departments and the revenues and expenses separately. So while there are some that you might look at together, like sanitation's more simple, and the fees, the city's goal is to have the sanitation fees offset the sanitation costs. That's more simple because of fewer transactions. Police, I'm not sure you kind of look at the two in a vacuum. I would say that the police, based on what we have presented, that the police department is over budget currently. And then we could have a separate conversation as to what the revenues are if they're over or under budget.
Councilman Esco, you have anything else? Afternoon.
Just
Oh, go ahead.
if I may add, Councilman Astor, since you mentioned the revenue piece, the one piece that I think, just to make the council and everyone else here aware, there is the projected budget in police for expenses does include $85,000 worth of U.S. DOJ funds, Department of Justice seized asset funds that are in the police department expenses on an actual basis and a budget basis. And the related revenue for those funds is recorded on an actual basis, but is not included in the budget. So that somewhat addresses your question to the offset of revenues and expenses. That's the one piece within the police department where the revenues and expenses should net and be equal, and they are on an actual basis for the DOJ funds and the use of those funds. But on a budget basis, we have $85,000 of expense, but not $85,000 of revenue. So that.
So the 513 is really like 4 something.
It is if.
Wait, you said we have the expense but not the revenue, I think it's.
So the cost is still 513 over, right? is what it is.
But it's because we haven't budgeted as an expense the $85,000
Correct.
in January.
Correct.
So if we make that adjustment for funds actually received, we reduce that police department deficit projection.
Correct, from 510 to
400.
For,
less 85, so 430-ish.
Yes.
Correct. I just wanted to mention that since Councilman Asbill asked that related question.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Todd. That was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. The second thing is, you mentioned that in projecting out labor for the remainder of the year, you sort of looked at a 2-week recent payroll. And there may be one item of some significance, which is settlement of a lawsuit where 2 employees were rehired. And I'm not sure we budgeted, and these police department employees, and I'm not sure there's anything budgeted for the remainder of the year for their salaries.
We did, yes.
So
So,
yes,
yes, so I do apologize for not mentioning that, but
I'm glad you caught.
But in addition to the 2 payrolls and that estimate through the end of the year, we did include an estimate for the well, not an estimate, but we had the Adams information. That was paid in July. And so we used that information within the budget, and then we estimated for the one, there's 2 other ones that have been recently that happened that we were aware of. Correct.
Since do you have a calculation for the cost that it's, the cost of the civil service payouts and the hearings? And things like that? You do
Not in front of me, but I can have it for the next meeting. Yes.
no, I mean, I think we just need to kind of dig into the departments themselves, so I think Todd just gave us a overall and,
I have some more comments, but I think I'll wait until we discuss the budget. Okay. In total, you want to do that now? Sure.
Or do you want to go to?
is your question about the budget in whole, or we want to go about departments?
They're in whole and by department. So, yeah, I'll be happy to go first. Yes. My appreciation is that effectively the city is projecting to end the year with a positive addition to the general fund balance of about $163,000. When we add that to 2020 beginning fund balance, we'll have which was $256,000. We'll end the year with a positive fund balance, general fund balance of $416,000 effective. And we can talk about what I mean by that, how I came up with that. If anybody has any questions, and that in and of itself, the fact that we had a positive year is an extraordinary outcome, considering a couple of major events. One is a significant loss of revenue, COVID-19 related, and the other is a significant overspending by the police department of, I think, in the area of $435,000, which is about 20% or so of the budget. And I think that's very positive. And the way that happened, by the way, because not everybody knows it, is the mayor and his administration did an outstanding job in putting together a package and collecting COVID-19 monies from the state, which ultimately came from the federal government. But through their hard work, ingenious work, and very professional work, they recovered for the city north of $900,000, which is in this budget. Without that, we would have had a very difficult time. We would be facing deficits. So I want to congratulate the mayor and his team, because he had some good people working with him some council members and some team members, Harahan City employees that did an outstanding job. They pulled our butts out of the fire. And I can't say enough good about that. Going on, another thing that happened in this budget year, which is a little disturbing to me or concerning to me, is that the police department used the full millage, 5% millage in 2020 in this budget. And the concern there is that millage was for raises as well as other police expenditures. I think what's been done is perfectly above board, but we've consumed all the money in a year. So it's now built in as cost. There's nothing there in 2021 or 2022 or 2023 for raises. So from the city's perspective, we consumed it all for good cause. But the original plan contemplated future raises, and I don't know how that happens now because the money has been spent. And I'm assuming that the money that was spent on this year, those expenses will be there next year. So there will be no money, no pool of money built up from the millage for raises. And I hope I'm wrong about that, but I just don't see it. And at the police department now, again, as I'm looking at it, they've overspent their budget by $428,000 if we make a correction in the budget for the Department of Justice funds. We've asked the chief for a recovery plan and haven't received anything. Todd has just confirmed that there's no additional projected hit from the two rather senior paid employees who were rehired. So that's good news. And my general comment is, Chief, you did an extraordinary job in the last 5 years coming in under budget. I can't accept any logic in your being, and I'll say $428,000 projected over budget for this year. But it's a situation that's not acceptable and it cannot be repeated. And I hope we don't have to have this conversation in 2021 because, as I said, it cannot be repeated. No one has license to overspend their budget without input and approval by this council. And I think this council is going to be reasonable, work with any department where they come to us, express a need, justify it, and the council can hopefully come up with a way to meet that need. But being blindsided, the end of the year, second half of the year, late into the second half of the year, it's just not acceptable. I don't know what happened because you did a fantastic job for the last 5 years. This year has not been good. So those are my comments in general. And again, I can't say enough to thank the mayor and the administration for the work they did in getting funds out of the state of Louisiana. They literally pulled us out of the fire. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I respond? Sure. You wanna- Okay, perfect, yeah.
I've got some statements to make and I have some information to pass out. First of all, I want to thank my staff and City Hall, administration, people in finance, as of within the last hour and a half, still getting information in regards to.
Chief, can you see me like someone?
Different
Maybe talk a little bit closer.
Again, thank the staff and City Hall and finance for giving us information within the last hour and a half in regards to this proposed budget amendment. One thing is assumption.
Wait. Did you say you just received this information?
I received some information within the last hour and a half.
Okay.
I'm still trying to go through this budget because there are a lot of things that I disagree with. So we're
So
still
did you
getting.
present your questions regarding your concerns and you saying, when did you present your questions and they received the information an hour and a half ago?
Well, one, in our conversation, I don't want to go, I'll answer that to start off with. About cutting back on overtime. So we stopped overtime. And then we looked at one of the budget runs, and they got a $1,500 in August overtime. So we checked on it, see how it went through. To make a long story short, apparently one employee, for the last year, they've been taking his or her paycheck and charging it to the overtime. So it's like $26,000 that needs to be backed out. It's going towards payroll. It's a wash, but it was charged to overtime. You follow what I'm saying?
So that employee's whole paycheck is being coded to overtime.
Coded overtime rather than being coded to payroll. So that reduces that what we use in overtime.
Did you receive the regular time pay or did you receive overtime pay?
I would assume regular time pay.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so the payroll amount should be correct in total. It's simply what account it was coded to within the system. When the employee was set up at some point by the city's payroll department, their payroll was linked to the overtime account number so that it automatically posted to that account number.
So it made it look like it was
It made it
overtime.
look like it was overtime, but it was just the normal payroll for this one individual. And so the chief brought that to our attention today, and it's another payroll charge. It's an appropriate payroll charge for the city, for the police department. It was just in the wrong line. Which all in all is pretty
It's still an
Right.
expense, it was just coded the wrong way.
correct.
Okay.
And Todd, the only thing you should do is just make sure it wasn't paid overtime.
Well,
No, it was paid, apparently paid, it was a regular pay, it was just coded wrong.
Yeah.
But, like comments before about how much overtime we use, you reduce that overtime by 26,000. You say there's money for, now we asked several times, we put in for COVID expenses, and they said the city's been reimbursed, they asked how much we were reimbursed, and I can't seem to get that answer. I don't know if the police department got reimbursed, what we spent. Does anybody have that? I think our first round, we put it like $4,000 between PPE, sanitizer, gloves, masks, stuff like that.
I'm pretty confident on that.
right,
So
so
my understanding
understanding
is
that,
the line, but it's been reimbursed.
And the other thing that came to our attention by accident a couple of months ago, the individual that's assigned to DEA, we pay his base pay on pre-2019 police officer pay. We pay the overtime, we get reimbursed for the overtime. We just found out a couple of weeks ago, all these years, the reimbursement's been coming in, but never been credited to the police department.
what's approximately that amount?
It varies month to month, maybe $400 or $500 a month.
Okay,
But I would say, just for the council's benefit, that the city received the funds and deposited the funds in their bank account. Which is and it's recorded as revenue for the city. The question is just whether or not it's police department revenue or city revenue. And I don't know that there's a delineation.
But there's no doubt that it's police department expenditure, right?
Correct.
Yes, the police department expenses are in that specific department and probably budgeted. I mean,
That's my question, were the expenses budgeted, because we're talking about spending over budget?
I would imagine, yes.
If I'm not mistaken, I think that the agent is on 239, the salary of other subcontractors. Isn't that where the DEA agents paid out
I
of?
believe so, yes.
That's budgeted for 36.
So all the years we've been reimbursed, we, the police department, not received that reimbursement.
how many years?
He's been here, there was two on there before I came on, so he probably took about 6.
The accounting for that could be considered the same as the Department of Justice money, but the fact of the matter here is,
No, it would be separate than that.
no, well, the fact of the matter here is, we budgeted for the expenditure. So you were funded through the appropriation of the council in your budget.
I don't
Where
know.
the money comes from for the police
understand.
department is 3 sources, as I understand it. It's sales tax revenue, a portion of our sales tax revenue, it's property tax, a 5 mil property tax, and it's an allocation from the city to the police department. Todd, is that correct?
Correct.
So
Yes.
the city funded that amount.
I don't believe that the overtime was put in the budget because it was reimbursed.
I'm sorry, it's either in there or it's not. I can't argue to that point right now.
I don't think we budgeted for the overtime because then we get reimbursed by the federal government.
I hope we budgeted for it, and we certainly will next year, we didn't this year. Because,
Like I said, we get it back, but it's never been credited to the police department.
but again, the city,
But the allocation is
by virtue of providing you
$100,000.
with
Am I reading that?
over $1.5 million, is it funding your department?
It's
Oh, we are just talking- Oh, I'm sorry, I thought he was talking about overtime.
about overtime for the EPA. Which is 50
That's your-
It's real two,
that's your 230,
so there's a budget.
What I think Chief's saying is that if the revenue was allocated, it would be on the budget. Not on the budget, but lower than.
And then
See, the distinction in the Department of Justice expenditure, we didn't put $85,000 in your budget. You got that money from DOJ. You spent that money appropriately, but the city never put it in your budget. And I think we should remedy that tonight. That's my suggestion. This is different. You've got a line item budget for the expenditures, and the city funds your budget.
I see.
So it's not where, as Todd says, where that relatively minor amount of money goes to general revenue is not significant, because the city has taken that general revenue and a whole bunch more to make your budget the $2.3 million budget that your department had. So if we took all the revenue you got from DOJ, but we gave you a line item for $85,000 for these vehicles, your budget, your expenditure budget is correct. The overtime you're talking about has been funded by the city by an allocation of general revenue plus property taxes plus your sales tax revenue. Pooled together, you had a budget of $2.3 million. So I think talking about the fact that you didn't get credit for this in terms of overspending a budget is meaningless, because you spent what you spent and you were budgeted what you were budgeted. We're not talking about revenue sources in terms of overspending a budget.
It was a reimbursement, and I don't think the overtime was included because it varies month by month.
Everything, well, all expenses vary month by month. And when we go into a budget process, we budget for the year, and we'll certainly consider that in next year's budget in more detail. But somebody has to tell us, somebody has to project that so we can budget the expense. And if it varies greatly during the year, Chief, I mean, you are the individual who knows your department's expenditures and changes better than any other person on the face of the earth. So if we budget something, or we don't budget something, and you're spending the money, or you're spending more or less, you need to bring it to our attention as the year progresses, because we don't run your department, and nobody questions your department in terms of individual expense allocations. That's solely your job, sir.
You know, for this proposed budget amendment, there's an assumption that a lot of it's front-end loaded expenditures. Some of the things that we spent money on in the first 6 months, they've doubled the second half. That's not going to be the case.
I agree.
You know, so
Well-
our projected over budget's going to be a lot less than $400,000.
Well, and I hope you're correct, Chief. Again, I personally asked you for a recovery bond. We have a projection, and
I disagree with the projection.
well, I hope you're correct,
Okay.
but we haven't seen that in black and white. I hope you're correct.
Todd, can you address
Sure,
projections
just
and
a-
what the
sure,
assumptions
just a-
that were made?
Sure, just a couple thoughts. First, the primary cost within the police department is salaries and benefits. And those, we did project based on actual pay periods. It's not a guess, it's not just what happened in the first 6 months. So I feel comfortable with those estimates, not that they're 100% correct, but there was an intentional effort to have those amounts be as accurate as possible, because they're the largest expense within the city. and the police department. In regards to the additional operating expenses, yes, there are some operating expenses that we looked at what happened in the first 6 months and estimated that the same level of activity would happen in the second 6 months. But I would say as a percentage of the police department's total budget, it's probably on the smaller side of the total budget. And so if it's less, if the actual amounts come in less, then that's great for the city. And I guess I would just add that we've had multiple meetings with the police chief, and if he has any concerns about the projections, to provide that feedback to the finance team, and we'd be happy to make those amendments and work with the mayor to include his feedback within these budget amounts. We would be more than happy to do that.
And I'd like to add to that, if I may. And Chief, I won't dispute with you that you spent some money in the first 6 months that will not be spent at a prorated rate in the second half of the year. However, the police department budget, the salaries and wages and directly related burden, pensions, FICA, unemployment taxes, insurance, those labor-related expenses are 84% of your budget. So, as I appreciate it, the second half of the year, your salaries are going to be more than the first half. I may be wrong about that. Todd and the finance department have done their best to project your labor out based upon the more recent 2-week payroll with some adjustments. So I guess what I'm saying is that 84% of your projected overrun, your total projected expenditures for the year of $2,838,000 is labor and labor-related expenses that you cannot cut unless you cut people. Or it includes overtime, but your overtime is $100 grand. So again, it can't be a significant amount of money in the second half of the year that your department is going to come in under budget. The total amount of your budget for the whole year for those items is only 16% of your $2.8 million. I hope you're correct, Chief. I want you to be correct because it's good for everyone. It's good for you. It's good for the city. But I don't see the numbers working out.
Let's see what happens. We go on to some things. Took office. Well, number one, my priority is my personnel is safe. That's paramount. Police personnel, they work, they go home, not a scratch on. It's paramount. Everything else is safe. I took office in May of 2014. The previous chief had left before his term ended. Things I discovered in 2014, right when I took office, is that Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement, LCLE, had a mandate. All commissioned personnel have to have 20 hours per year of in-service training. When I took office in May, nobody had hit that 20 hours. So by putting people in training, we have to compensate. Either they get comp time or they get overtime.
That's May of 2014.
And it's subsequent to that too. So the people I have working on the street, if they have to attend training, then I have, depending on how many people on the shift, I got to bring somebody in to fill their position. So you're talking about all our full-time people and our reserves go through the in-service training.
Can you tell me, sorry, I cut you off. Can you tell me how many paid commissioned officers you have on your payroll?
Mission,
Post-certified, I'm sorry. Paid post-certified.
sworn police 24, 4 jailers, and 3 civilian employees.
So you have 24 cops on the street. Is that right? So that gives you,
Wait, not on, okay. That's counting myself, training officer.
so that gives you, on average, 6 per shift. You have 4 shifts.
Well, that's not, it doesn't work out that way. Perfect world, I have 4 in a shift. That's not always the case. Somebody can be off sick, be on vacation, be in training. The 24 is counting myself, detective, and training officer.
And you said you have 4 jailers and then 3.
Would you, there was 3 city,
So,
3, 30,
so like your secretary and some of them, this is.
2 records. Can I finish what I was going? Alright. So I had that one problem that I have on a yearly basis, where everybody wants for 20 hours in service. The other thing I discovered when I took office in 14, police personnel were never paid for paid holiday. They were given comp time. And that's why some of these people that have left, retired, or whatever, have had large amounts of payouts because of the amount of comp time that was built up. I was able to convince previous administrations that they needed to be paid. Personnel works 2 days, 2 holidays, they get 3 days off. I said, okay, person takes a day off. I said, then I can bring somebody in, pay them overtime to take care of that spot. So since either 15, probably maybe end of 14 or beginning of 15, the administration started paying our employees overtime for the 13 holidays. Plus, civil service, they get no less than any other employee within city government. They also get their birthday off. So the same thing happens, somebody's off, and I have to fill a position. I have to pay somebody the comp time overtime. Next, civil service rules. This is one that one of y'all aware of now. Should a member of a classified service work assignment be such that is scheduled to work on legal holiday as set by this board, he will be paid an additional compensation of 1.5 times his usual pay rate. When a holiday occurs on an employee's rest day, the following workday will be considered his holiday. So basically, all civil service employees, both police and fire, are paid for the holiday, either the holiday or the next work.
That's in your budget, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, it's a terrific, it's 13 paid holidays.
We budget.
We budgeted for that.
I'm just saying, this is what,
And Chief, with all due respect, I know you were citing stuff that was back in 2014, we're talking about.
I understand, but I'm just saying,
Okay, I'm just,
Can I make a comment just in general, Chief? Your actual expenditures in 2019 were $2,398,000. Your actual expenditures for this year are projected to be $2,838,000. That's a $440,000 increase. So all these things you're talking about are very real. And your officers need to be trained. They need to have all the safety gear. They need to have, but yeah, nothing's changed in that regard, except your department has spent $440,000 more than last year, some 25% more than last year, and over budget. Yes, sir.
vacation time, civil service employees accrue 12 hours per month vacation time. Vacation period shall increase 1 day each year of service over 10 years up to a maximum of 30 days. Police retirement, that is just gone. One of the things, City of Harahan years ago, they had the option because of the pension system for police and fire opt out of Social Security. They failed to do so. So we pay Social Security on every employee, and we also pay at present 33.75% on comp time. Now, I'm sorry, Social Security retirement system, I'm sorry. One of the things we discovered in this budget, in the budget, it's charged overtime with the retirement. The officers do not get overtime on their pension, so some of that money has to be backed out of pension, about $30,000.
I'll address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to address that, Chief. Chief is correct that in a prior version of the budget, we did have the retirement match miscalculated or had considered the overtime amount in the retirement match calculation. And I believe that's been adjusted and corrected in the budget that's presented in front of you today.
Mentioned in the previous council meeting, because of COVID-19, I'm concerned about citizens being on confinement at their residence because of mental health issues and depression. Consequently, at least alcohol, drug abuse, along with other issues such as suicide, domestic violence, and theft, to mention a few. All these areas, the Harahan Police Department handles. The drug dealer today delivers his drugs. It's not like before that you go to a street corner and buy them. And we've made some drug arrests. Also, I'm concerned about the turmoil in this country. There's been a run on firearms created a shortage, which means there are more weapons on the streets. What we're seeing recently in some drug arrests that were made, that people are carrying pistols that shoot high caliber cartridges across several. One drug arrest recently turned up two guns through ballistics showed that they were used in shootings in other areas in our metropolitan area. I had 3 officers got out the academy in August. I got 4 that are scheduled to graduate in November. Again, all my officers say, stop hiring some extra people because of what's going on. It's something I thought that needed to be done. We're a safe city. We're trying to citizens live here because it's a safe community. You have a police car passing in your neighborhood 2 or 3 times a day, at least. When a call is made to 911, we're there in 2 or 3 minutes, whether it's a fire, medical, police call. Officers are handling calls in a professional manner and constantly receiving complaints. We've been written up several times to be in the same city. Eliminated the position of police captain and lieutenant. Positions currently are chief, assistant chief, sergeant, police officer. The other thing is appearance bond.
Before you move on, I want to interrupt. I don't think there's anybody up here that will dispute that your officers need to be paid well, trained well, and equipped well to keep them safe on the street. I think the issue is that there's a management issue with the budget and how your manpower is managed, and that falls on you, chief. And so to bring in, I'm happy you brought all that up. We are a safe city, and we appreciate that, but it has to be done within the budget, and it's been done in the budget in the past. We've been safe in the past and within the budget. So we need to figure out how to get back.
Everyone up here will say we're very comfortable. We feel we're in the safest city. No one up here has ever questioned that.
And Chief, I appreciate what you said, that you're hiring more people because you think it's necessary. But sir, you don't have license to do that. You don't have authority to do that. You have to live within your budget. And if you want to make a logical argument, and I think you could, that more is better, you have to come to the council and we have to find the money. We can't print money. If it weren't for the COVID-19 monies that the administration was able to get this year, you single-handedly, your department would have put us into a deficit situation. I can't impress it enough that you don't have license to overspend your budget. And I'm not arguing with how good a job your department does. I think y'all do a great job. I'm very appreciative of you and what you've done and your officers, but we can't print money. We can't spend $400,000 in the department when we operate on a very tight budget. It's just not acceptable, Chief.
Chief, how many officers did you hire?
Well, it's what we have right now.
So the 24 is included in the 3 that in the academy. So that's the 20. I don't know if that was going to be an issue.
No, it's everything.
So when you hired these 3, did you check to make sure that the money was in your budget to compensate and cover those additional salaries?
I have a question.
How much were in the payoffs
For the settlements?
for
Well,
some?
I think we're going to get to that.
Chief, when we hired back 2 senior officers, are we making cuts to offset that? And I don't know what their salaries are, but they're senior. They're coming in with their own pay grades. So that might be the equivalent of 3 other officers. Are you,
Eliminated a captain and lieutenant.
but not just titles, you've eliminated
The
people.
position.
People.
People in
position.
Okay, but it's the people that get paid, not positions. So I don't want us to misunderstand. So you've equalized your payroll to what it was before you rehired. Your weekly payroll is now equal to what it was before you rehired. And will your payroll be, when the additional recruits come out, will it be equal to the payroll before you rehired these 2 gentlemen? Will you be in budget? I don't know the answer to that, sir. I'm concerned. But I don't know the answer to that. And respectfully, with all due respect, it's your department. you need to get with finance and ensure you're living within your budget. And I know you're quite capable of that because, by golly, I've seen firsthand you do it for the last 5-6 years. Under duressful situations, you manage to come in under budget, provide us with a safe city. We're very appreciative for what your department has done, what you have done. The citizens appreciated it enough to pass a 5 mil property tax. But we can't just spend money because.
Ms. Johnson, if you didn't take a phone call, can you go in the hallway, please?
So I think if we can address Councilman Johnson's question, I think clearly the biggest overage is from the settlements, legal fees, the payouts, and the additional hiring, if I had to guess. So I know Councilman Johnson and answered. Chief, do you have those figures on the payouts for the settlements? Is that what you were asking for?
Yes.
Total between the three.
Between the three? I thought there was like 7.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I said before, a lot of that
That was 150, you said?
was time that we had to pay them that they had owed comp time, they paid it for a number of years. And their comp time had built up. I've been saying that's a contingent liability, the amount of comp time, and vacation time that is built
And
up.
that's the settlements, but what about like,
So when they,
what about attorney fees and stuff like that? How much was attorney fees? Does anybody know that?
No, so just to clarify, so Councilman Asbill asked for the exact amounts on the payments. I don't have that information exact. I have some numbers in my head, but given the sensitivity, I want to make sure that it's accurate. So I'll put together a schedule and provide it to the council.
would you agree that part of it's comp time and vacation?
No, sir.
No?
No, because that is part of the overage is related to that because comp time, not comp time, but the payout of annual and sick leave when folks leave, that is not budgeted within any departments for the city. And it's an expense when it's incurred, okay? So, and that's nothing new, that's the way the city's done it for many years.
You're correct.
Okay.
Big ones, police officers not paid for sick time.
Okay.
It's comp time and vacation time. They're not paid.
Whatever earned but unused time that's due upon termination or retirement or ending of employment. That expense is not typically budgeted within the city because you don't know.
So we're dealing with the same thing with fire.
You don't know. Fire department has the same issue.
But I brought it up because it used to be a very large amount when I took office, that it was a contingent liability. A bunch of people leave in 1 year, it's gotta be paid out. Correct.
When you make your calculation of payouts, can you include the cost of civil service hearings, including the attorney's fees?
Correct.
The
That's what
bookkeeper,
I'm
So,
the payout of the other attorney's fees.
so to me, that's two different payouts. You have an annual leave or a payout for earned but unpaid time on ending of employment.
You can put them
Okay.
separate, we can add them.
That's one number. A separate number is additional payroll and state supplemental pay and reimbursement for health insurance benefits, COBRA payments paid for the result of a civil service hearing. Okay, and then the attorney's fees, civil service attorney's fees, that's a separate, to me, it's two separate calculations.
The civil service attorney's fees came out of civil service department.
Out of the civil service department.
So it didn't even affect his budget at all.
Well, but it costs the city about $70,000.
It's civil service.
And there was an argument
I'm
putting
talking
that
about police department.
as a police department expense.
We'll prepare the information.
You know, having said that, as an individual who's been responsible for budgeting at major levels, if you have these costs because of a series of terminations, you know you're going to incur these costs. So you have to cut somewhere else. It's not a simple and easy proposition. But again, we can't print money. We can't print money. We don't have that as even an alternative. So when your department is facing these costs, chief, you need a manager by cutting some. And again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for the city of Harahan as police chief and what your department does for the city of Harahan. I love living here, and it's largely because of the police department. But you gotta live within your budget. And if things are changing and you're incurring expenses, you gotta look for offsetting cost reductions. That's what we do in our personal lives. If suddenly you have expenses over here, you cut over here. It's always painful. It's never easy. The alternative is you come back to the council and you make the case, and we see if we think it's something we need to address and if we have the means to do it. But here we are at the end of the year, being surprised, and it's just not right, chief. Anytime you have an issue, please come to the council with it, make a case, and we'll try to determine if we think we should and can help.
Let's think about the appearance bond. It's state law, city ordinance. As a head police chief, I've been bringing it up that we have not been paid. Since I've been here, the department's probably lost a little over $100,000. I've talked to the mayor of the city, addressing that issue as we speak. But this is money that would be allocated to the police department by cars. Last year, with some of the DOJ money, I bought 24 laptops. The equipment that is needed for the officers on the street, the city has to provide them. But luckily, I had some DOJ money and other outside money that was given to the department. Change the fleet to bring it up to date. I mean, these cars, when I came in, 10 years old, older, 100+ thousand miles, that is their office furniture when they're at time on your tour of duty. All the new cars that I bought since I've been here have been bought by non-state officers.
And chief, we appreciate that. We see it on the street. We feel our officers are safer. I feel our city's safer, and we appreciate it.
I do agree with the chief on the appearance bond money. It was cut out before I took office. We try to logistically figure out how to put it back into place and then actually institute to get it back into place. It's become a little bit more of a task than just pressing a few buttons and making sure it's all, all legitimate. We all are trying to figure out what he is, right, all that.
And I would agree with you, Tim, Mayor, and we absolutely have to try to address that issue and get the money allocated. But I'm gonna fall back again. The police department budget comes from various sources. So we budget the police department, not necessarily on how much money he brings in from other sources, but what the council thinks is necessary. So I guess in a real simplistic point, if he had $20,000 budgeted revenue for appearance bonds in the year 2020, the allocation from general revenues would have been 20,000 less. We wouldn't have just increased the police department budget. The budget is what everyone thought was necessary, not at a maximum, at a point we could live with. So the funding sources then will be expanded: sales tax, appearance bonds, property taxes, and allocation from general revenue. So I agree with you, it should be fixed, it should be recognized, it should go to the police department, it should be projected. But it's not necessarily going to change the overall budget just because suddenly 20,000 a year appears. The city council, with the mayor proposing a budget, may decide that needs to go somewhere else. Police department, senior center. We make allocations of funds up here, and a particular funding source doesn't change the big picture.
My biggest concern is, and Chief, I think everybody said that has full respect for you and believe you. I think we all agree we're safe, call, y'all come, no questions asked. I mean, I was pretty shocked myself when I saw the figures. I believe a lot of it has to do, again, I will say, with the additional hires and the settlements paid out this year. I am hoping that maybe we can address the issues, maybe with the settlements, and maybe we won't see those in the future, but I mean, nobody knows. What I'm concerned about is it's now September 1. In 4 months, we're going to be facing January 2021. What are we going to do then? Because the city cannot afford to fund a $2.8 million police department budget. And that's just the reality. That is the honest truth. And I don't know, and we're going to have to work on it. And I agree with Mr. Buddy. We approached you to present some type of, come to us. I know we talked about maybe, okay, we're going to scratch some overtime, and I appreciate that. And that definitely does reduce the overspending, but I'm just concerned with next year's going to bring. And we said it before in the meeting, I don't think anybody wants anybody to be laid off, especially in a time like this. Nobody wants anybody to see them lose their job. However, there's only so much money that can go around in this city. So, yeah, I'm very concerned about that. And we've already started running some potential projections for 2021. And, Chief, I don't know, we're going to have to figure out something. And hopefully maybe with the appearance bonds, we're going to make the adjustment to the DOJ money, which is what we talked about initially. I saw the notes about checking the overtime reduction. I mean, it's chipping away a little bit here and there, but it's still a huge overspending. I'm sure you're aware. Chief, again, nobody is doubting your officer's safety. Nobody is doubting that for 1 second. And I hope the public is not taking that that's what we're trying to do here, because nobody sitting up here is doubting that. I think the argument is, and I'll agree with Mr. Buddy, is this is what your budget is. Again, we talked about it. If you give your daughter $5 and say, here's $5, and she spends $20, the additional hires, I think, definitely put it out of, whether you thought the money was there, it probably should have been discussed with this council. Hey guys, I'm considering, do I have the money? Can you give me a projection? You get the run sheets every month like we do. So, I mean, there has to be responsibility taken. And I'm not saying you're dodging responsibility, but we got to figure it out. We have to figure it out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We're going to have to figure it out. And I will request again, preferably by the next council meeting, I would like in my hands, in this administration and this council, the finance director, a recovery plan for the Harahan Police Department, finishing out through 2020, and maybe projection of what we're going to do come 2021.
Like I said, we're not paying overtime other than
And I get that. I get that. Chief.
buying equipment. Using DOJ money. So, overtime pay we pay is holiday pay.
If I'm reading this correctly, currently overtime pay for the last 6 months of the year, already almost halfway through the last 6 months of the year, it's $41,000. Some of that money's already been spent. If you cut it all out, it would be at $41,000.
Which, the holiday pay?
That what you said?
You credited 26,000, was taken out.
No,
The last 6 months.
I'm looking at the last 6 month projection, and assuming it's reasonable, and it may have some cause for concern, maybe an error, but it's projected at 41,000. So if we eliminated overtime from July 1 to December 31, the projected expenditures for the police department would be reduced by 41,000. Now, we've already spent some overtime, I assume.
Yeah, there's been some money that's already, but I will say it's very minimal. It's been a small amount.
Okay.
The only thing in August.
But just to keep it in perspective, if we eliminated it all, we would be talking about less than 10% of the police department's overspending in this year.
Right.
So I don't want to belittle it, because there's no low-hanging fruit where you can just say, well, look, I just saved $400,000. Saving $40,000 is how you chip away at a $400,000 deficit. But it's not in and of itself the low hanging fruit.
Again, I don't believe the justice to be. Some of the things that were doubled, we're not going to recover.
Well, I hope it all proves correct, Chief. You know what our concerns are.
Okay, but
I'm sorry,
there's,
but Chief, you're saying we'll wait and see. We can't wait and see. That's not the way it works. We can't wait until December and see what the overage
What I'm
is.
saying is that some of the things they projected to double are not going to double.
So maybe Chief, if you could provide us with a list of those accounts and your projected costs through the end of December, we can consider with the mayor and make these adjustments. And we can be aware of the dollar impact to the total budget for the city. So we'd be happy to make those edits if you have. the-
When we projecting, we're going off of previous history, what we see right here in front of us. If you have something you're cutting that we don't know, we can't project that.
So that's what he's gonna do.
So if you get us something together, we,
Put together some little coverage plan, 41 overtime's a good start. You know, we'll look to see who's been doubled up, and that's a better start, and then we can set projections.
Chief, I'm a guy sitting here saying, I don't wanna be over budget. But I'm also sitting here saying, I wanna stay, if you gotta pay that 41,000 overtime, I'm gonna stand right here going to deficit to pay that overtime, if that's what it takes to keep us safe. I'll come, build up. Other department. Thank you, Chief.
So we wanted to address some issues in some of the other departments, for those who saw the budget amendments on the city website. I don't know if anybody has it in front of them, but, the expenditures for the fire department, line 24, the biggest projection of that overspending was as Chief talked about, if somebody leaves and they have all this time accumulated, fire department had a gentleman that left after something years of service. So that was a bulk of his overspending. There were some additional for training and maybe some equipment that was overspent, but the bulk of that was the, retirement and payout for those. And like we talked about, it's hard to budget something like that because we just never know who's leaving, and hopefully maybe nobody. That was the fire department line 24. 26, the street and maintenance department, that was just various jobs. We addressed it with the mayor this morning. Half of that were bills that were paid at the beginning of the year for some connections. Mayor, if you would like to just explain that. So some of it was some sewer connections.
So what happens is in the beginning of the year, we saw it last year, and I've seen it before, the river rises, and when the river rises, when the river rises, it floats the infrastructure. Well, when the river starts to pull back, the infrastructure tends to sink. And then we have a situation where people's house connections actually disjoint with the city connection on the city side. So it's the city's responsibility to go out and fix that. So you're able to supply that resident the ability to use their sewer. And so we see it a lot. We saw it last year. We've actually did some studies that happened in 2013. But just so you know, last year the river came up to 19 feet, stayed there for 6 months, and when it came down, it wreaked havoc. And this year we had not such a rise, but something pretty close to it. And I'm doing everything I can. I think that's what people care about, flushing their toilets, and I think it's very important. And so, believe it or not, that's what we are. We're fixing their ability to get their sewer off their property.
I'm curious how much of that Highland Street was also repairs that were made with the parish money that we received last year? Was any of that?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
On highways and streets, that is some parish money. That Councilman Johnson, yes, he told those things, the call.
Yeah, so the revenue came in last year when we spent it this year.
That is correct.
No, these were specific jobs on houses.
No, if there was a specific job allocated to a specific house, that is not right.
Right, these were specific,
That's not-
I think there were
that's
3 addresses that were literally done right at the beginning of 2020. that was almost about 40% of the potential over budget in that department.
Mayor, is this, and Todd, is this a miscoding? Are these sewer expenses that we're charging the streets?
And I guess when I say sewer, I guess let me iterate, I think it is something, but it was repairs to the street, something with the connection or something.
Basically, it's the sewer connection on the city property
Right,
is where this is going. It's not the actual house,
right.
individual's property.
But I understand
Where
that,
it ties into the city when we have to provide that to.
but why is it being charged to the street department? I mean, I'm not questioning the necessity of the expense.
Councilman Asbill brought the same thing up, so.
I would
We can just,
take that put the street, because what happens is that's where we are connected. We're usually connected at the sidewalk or right between the sidewalk and the street. And I would think probably 9 out of 10 times a piece of street has to be pulled up and repaired.
Yeah, but I'm gonna agree, this needs to be changed to code, a whole different one.
Okay.
And again, not questioning the necessity of the
Your
expenditure.
prerogative, Councilman Chadley, and it's your job to correct me. Thank you very much.
We can keep better track.
and also clearly the next biggest one would be the line 31, the civil service. We all know that was additional charges that we did not budget for. We only budgeted the secretaries.
Councilman Wheeler, what page are you on?
So it's page 1, just the overall budget is line 31, where it says civil service. Initially, when the budget was adopted, it just was enough just to cover just the secretary's salary. And I think we put like maybe 4,000, if I'm not mistaken, for the civil service attorney. Again, we're all hoping that maybe these hearings will subside, maybe go away. We're gonna have to address that. So that's clearly why you can see that line item is really overspent. And then there were some issues in the general government and administration. We have addressed those issues. Unless something absolutely has to truly be done right now, we're requesting, well, my suggestion was to not do anything between now and the end of the year. We understand the work needs to be done, so let me just make sure this is not being interpreted any different way. But we don't know if COVID's gonna be here next year. And we need to be prepared for what's happening, because yes, there is a potential another payment that's coming in, but after the end of September, that's it. There's no more unless the federal government extends CARES. Councilman Asbill will probably elaborate a little more on that.
Can I elaborate on that? All right, so I had to spend some money at the gym, because the two air conditioners were limping along and 2 air conditioners were wiped out. And then we have 3 voting places there that we got in a whole lot of trouble for from the voter registrar's office. And I wasn't getting that heat again, so we ended up replacing 2 air conditioning units and made sure, so now we got 2 limping along and 2 of them got replaced. And
Now that,
from what I understand,
that's your take now, yeah.
And the mayor doesn't even know it yet, but there are 2 trees that need to be addressed. It's gonna be emergency.
Well, and again, let me just
They have to be
reiterate,
addressed.
we're not saying that anything that needs to be done is not going to be done from this day forward. I think we just need to be cautious and, you know, I think we're all concerned. I'm hoping maybe things will get better. It seems like our sales tax are starting to go up. People are going out. I certainly appreciate everybody going out and supporting all the Harahan businesses because we certainly need it. I hope it continues to go up. I think people are kind of getting a little antsy and ready to go do things and they're going out and, so.
You know what, Councilman Miller, just real fast, that our businesses here are so resilient. I don't believe that we've lost a single business here. Everyone
You know,
is stuck in, it's been incredible.
It's been a blessing because part of me wonders how they're surviving, and I think everybody can think that, you know, I mean, it's unfortunate, it's put them in situations, I don't think anybody thought we would be living in something like this. So I'm just very, yes, they're very resilient, I'm very appreciative of the citizens going out and supporting them, and just pleased to continue to do so. But look,
Actually, some picked up lunch crowds when they didn't have lunch crowds, some picked up dinner crowds when they didn't have dinner crowds before, and it's been phenomenal. I mean, yeah, thank everybody.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So look, this council is working hard. I mean, we have meetings, if not every week, phone calls specifically about this budget. Chief, we're gonna work it out. We're gonna have to work it out, okay? And I think we gotta try to finish out this year, try to keep his expenses down as minimal as we can. Hopefully maybe it goes up. I mean, we'll see how it works, and then we're gonna definitely look into 2020.
like I said, the ACs and also just different repairs around the city, we should look at capital to pull some money from there rather than pull from the general.
Yeah.
I did, I'm sorry. But last year, I just want to let you know, I did not spend any capital dollars. So I was like, I might as well have capital.
Did you by chance have the, is that what you asked? Do you have the totals for like sewer and capital?
Totals for.
Just like where we're at now with the money that's in those accounts, did Dennis pull those for you?
So just, yes, I have cash in the bank for each fund as of today, but just mindful that some of the funds still have some due funds.
Yeah.
And I don't have that information, and it's not meant to be net assets of each fund either, because they may have accrued liabilities, accounts payable, this. So, but the cash balance in the general fund, roughly 1.6 million, as of today. So, which we currently project that should get us, through the end of the year. And then in December, we normally get all the property tax payments. So
Todd, that's unrestricted, unencumbered?
that's cash in the, yes, so the general fund has generally no restricted funds.
Okay.
There's the DOJ funds are in a separate account. So that has 220,000 in it for the police chief. The capital project fund, the sewer fund has 181,000 in it. And the capital fund has roughly 350,000 in it. And that's where it's misleading, because the capital project fund also has an amount due from some of the other funds. So, perhaps so you asked unencumbered, Mr. Buddy, so there is a balance in the general fund and there is the capital fund, which is a product of, in the past, the city had, I may have mentioned this previously, but the city had one bank account, that functioned as a pooled account for nearly all the funds. And we segregated that out with the purpose being so we could look at a bank account and understand how much is left for a particular fund.
So theoretically, our capital fund should have how much in it, 1.3 million?
Roughly $1.1 million to $1.2 million, somewhere around there.
And so we kid ourselves if we think that 1.1 million is available, it's not.
Within the general fund.
So my suggestion is that you put together a plan and we pay all these due fronts, so we know what money we have available to actually spend.
Fair enough.
I think you're already working along those lines.
We are working
So,
on
but if the city, the general fund pays the capital fund, now we're looking at a capital fund that's whole. And to the extent we have capital repairs that need to be paid for, the money's there. The general fund now has a much lower balance to use for general purposes, but that's the reality of the situation. And I know the sewer fund is the same situation. Right now, the sewer fund's got 160-something thousand, I think you said.
181.
181.
181, but it owes the general fund more than that, correct?
Correct.
So if we can get these funds to pay the other funds, then we can look at a fund and say, well, where are we?
Did you say the money that the sewers, that's from the transfers from before?
That's from the transfer.
From the sewer to the general.
Years back, over multiple years. Yes, the $1 million.
Todd, you said there was, you said there was about $220,000 in the DOJ
Correct.
cash.
Correct.
Can you discuss, just maybe give a general list of some of the appropriate expenses that DOJ funds can be spent on?
Sure, so I don't have the actual guidance in front of me, but to the best of my recollection, primarily capital-related needs, and the chief can maybe explain it, but it's primarily capital-related, equipment-related needs, not to fund the general operations of the police department. And just in the recent history, the funds have been used to purchase laptops, computers, and other related equipment for the police
Do you
department.
have to spend it in the same county, or does it continue to roll over? Okay.
No, we can roll forward.
Are there any capital expenditures that were covered by the general fund this year that can be reimbursed by the DOJ funds?
I don't know.
Or is that must have,
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, we can certainly look, I mean, there may be some small amounts potentially, but certainly the more significant dollar amounts related to the equipment purchases by the police department were funded by the DOJ.
We'll make them, we can do it.
Yeah.
Make a motion, move to address the council.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Azabel, second by Councilman Wheeler, to open and address the council. Anyone like to come speak, please state your name.
No, I'm gonna address the council. Did I understand, Joe, correctly, that the police village has been overspent for 4 years?
No, no, no.
He said there's no money for raises for 2021, 2022, and on,
That's future years.
future years. That's
It
what I'm
has
talking
not been overspent.
about. Well, if we spent all the money from those 3 years,
No, no, we spent the money for 2020.
but you said there's no money for raises for
There were
2021.
raises envisioned.
There will be when the money comes in. He
There
said.
were raises
That's
envisioned,
what I thought. The money's gonna be collected every year.
That's correct.
but raises have already been made. Salaries have been adjusted, personnel have been hired. The entire millage has been consumed in the budget.
Correct.
So when next year's millage is collected, unless we roll back raises or reduce personnel, the money's been committed.
Okay,
It hasn't been overspent.
okay, that's what I'm asking.
When I say there's no money for raises, I mean future raises that have been
Okay.
had are not raises, they're now salaries.
So if there's no increase in personnel, you're fine.
If there's no increase in personnel and there's no raises given to the personnel,
If there's no increase in personnel and we cut the cost of living
Right.
raises
Right.
that the chief has implemented, then there's no issue.
correct. But the point is that in my mind, and I'm just one person, but in my mind, some of that money should have been not spent. It should have been funded, put into a fund for future years when we use it for raises.
I agree.
1% raises is $15,000. However, it's 15,000 in 2021, it's 30,000 in 2022, it's 45,000 in 2023. It's cumulative. It's actually a little more than that because of the cumulative effect. I'm just saying the money has been allocated
Right.
appropriately.
To the people that are currently there.
But guys,
Yes, ma'am.
we have good things happening in Harahan, and that's a village that was put through for the police department.
Oh, I understand that.
88 acres, Colonial Country Club, in the process of being developed. All of them houses are gonna add tax revenue to the city.
That's debatable. Okay, do we have a total amount on the settlements for the civil service board at all?
We asked for that tonight,
We asked for that.
and we'll have it at the next
I
meeting.
We'll have it for the next meeting.
Will that include all the lawyers' fees too?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what we have.
Everything?
Yes, ma'am.
And just so, I mean, I don't know if you heard, there was, I asked the chief that question to Ms. Judy, and he said approximately 150. So
150 what?
150 for 3
Oh,
payouts,
the 3
not
payouts.
including attorneys,
150,000?
yes, ma'am.
just for payouts.
Just for the pay.
Just
I
for
just wanted to
payouts,
give you that
not for the
information.
lawyers' fees?
Correct, that's right.
Yeah, okay. But the lawyer fees are included in the civil service line. I think it was what, like 50 or 60,000? Wait, that's true.
Yeah, that's why they're
Now, wait, the
134%
civil
of the budget.
service attorneys are included in civil service. The police department's
Yeah,
attorneys
so
are not.
Ms. Judy, Ty will get that information to you by the next council meeting. but I just wanted to give you, in case you couldn't hear.
No, you can't.
Okay.
Y'all don't use the microphones. You have to speak directly into this mic, otherwise you don't.
Miss Judy, I think we all have, okay?
All right,
Okay.
He might have said it when you was on.
You might have been answering your phone call at the time when he said it.
well, sometimes
You
you get an
recall
emergency
that.
call and you have to take it.
I did too.
Miss Judy,
I know.
Miss Judy, we will have that information for you by the next council meeting.
Good.
Okay.
All right, can Todd show us in this budget, I'm assuming, and maybe I'm wrong, that the $900,000 that we got in the COVID payment is the part of the $1 million that Mr. Bodier said he brought in?
What $1 million are you talking about? The $1 million from last year?
No, this year. You said it 2 meetings ago that you brought in $1,333,000
Last year.
in 19 and $1 million this year.
Right, that was $1 million before the second CARES payment, so now it's like $1,450,000.
So where is it in the budget? Because I don't find it.
It's in row 8. It's in row 8 on page 1, and then row 54 on page 2.
Line 54 is the CARES Act money.
Okay, so that's $475,000, correct?
No, it should be 925, 954.
Did you print the new version that was posted online? You may have grabbed the old one.
I did, I grabbed the old one, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm
So-
sorry. So that, and where is it being spent? Do we know?
The CARES Act?
It was already spent. It's a reimbursement for the cost incurred.
So it's a wash.
Goes back in. Yeah.
Okay.
Budget is a revenue item in this budget to offset all the expenses in this budget.
Right. Okay, so I look forward to receiving that information at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Ms. Rachel, you need to come?
Come
on.
Just come up and say
I
hi.
mean, you have to speak.
It's about time you finally got together with the budget.
Are you complimenting us?
The overspent,
Watch
it's been going on for years.
Watch yourself.
This is not the first time the police department has spent way over. their
No, ma'am, that's not
budget.
correct. I can attest for the last 5 years that I'm personally aware of, the police department has underspent their budget for the last 5 years. This is an anomaly, I'm sorry. This is the odd year.
They have spent over the budget for years and years.
No, ma'am.
Miss Magie, you know what? I think, look, we're gonna leave this because you're actually giving us a compliment and I'm so excited.
No, finally.
And so we're gonna put this meeting on a good note.
Right.
We will have the information that y'all are requesting by the next council meeting. And I make a motion to close address the council.
Okay, second by Councilman Will, second by Councilman Buddy, to close address council. All in favor?
Yeah.
It's motion to adjourn.
No, wait,
No, we're adjourning.
you want to adjourn? Wait,
We don't have.
wait, are we gonna vote on the budget?
No, this is just the hearing.
Okay, thank you, I'm sorry.
So the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Yeah, you 09.